Yes. Hello. Hello. Yep. You're live. Cool. We'll start in a few minutes. I'm live now. I'm just making sure everything is in order. This is the HarperCollins. We're doing this special session today. So this is HarperCollins India in association with Asia Society India Center. So we'll be doing this live. So I'll be looking at your questions. So there is Prakash Parmar, there is Jinla Ray, Saket, Indraneel, Amanpreet. So quite a few of y'all. Nice to see y'all. We will start in a few minutes. Not few minutes, a few seconds really. I'll start at 8:1 or 8:2. We'll be talking today on yoga mythology. So that's my talk today on yoga mythology. This is a book published by HarperCollins. So just give me a thumbs up if y'all can hear me clearly and the sound is okay. It looks okay, but it's good to always know. So hi Pranav, hi uh, Mr. Naidu. I have seen you on Twitter. Sanjeev Nath, Madhuri, Anil, Monica Deora, Sameep Agarwal from so lots of people here. Good. Yes, yoga mythology. So good. So we'll start in about 2 minutes. We're almost there. Yes, thank you. Thank you for giving me a thumbs up. I'm very clear that the sound is good. Um, yeah. There'll be cross posting. Let me just check if everything is in order. Everything looks in order. Okay, I have friends from different parts of the world also joining, so that's cool. Yes. So namaste everyone. So yoga mythology. This book. If you see this book, you will see this title is very interesting. It says Devdutt Patnaik with Matthew Ruley. So this whole book happened. This whole book which I wrote was because a young man from America who teaches yoga sent me a note saying that there are so many asanas and every of the asana is associated with different names: Vashishtha, Vishwamitra, Bharadwaj, and people all over the world are practicing yoga, but they don't know the meanings of these words. Setu, Bandhasan, all these kind of words are there, so we don't know what they mean. So will you write a book on it? Because I've read your book Jaya, and will you do it? So I said okay, fine, and I decided to do it. So it's not really a book on yoga. So it's not, for example, mm, when it's not a book that sort of explains yogic practices. It is on the mythological aspects of it, because yoga word is used a lot in our scriptures. Vishnu uses the word, with Shiva you find the word, with Devi you find the word. The word yoga is used in different ways, in different contexts, by different people, by gods, by goddesses, by rishis. You have rishi, the most common image that we have is of a rishi doing tapasya. So rishi does tapasya, and the glare is coming, so I'm trying to avoid the glare. Okay. How do I do this? This is always going to be a problem when you're using the laptop. I look down, so maybe that will be better. Yeah, I'll talk on Kundalini. I can see some people are asking about Kundalini. Some people are asking, there are people from Nepal here. Shubha Vijaya, they're talking about today's Kojagiri. So Kojagiri is the full moon night, and my friend said today is the blue moon because there are two new moons in this 1 month, and when there are two full moons in the same month, it's called the blue moon. So once in a blue moon. So this blue moon happens, next one will happen 30 years later, so it's a special time. So HarperCollins has fixed a very nice time to have this conversation on the blue moon day. Right, so it's interesting. I didn't know about this. So Matthew Ruley, coming back to how this book happened, Matthew Ruley wrote to me, and I decided to do this book. And if you buy this book, I mean, it'll be nice if you buy this book. But if you'll see a lot of posters. This young man over here, this is Matthew Ruley, and these notes are written by him. So I told him, you decide which asanas you want me to talk on. Because I'm not a yoga expert, I am not a yoga teacher. I understand yoga philosophically. I understand. I've been a student of Yoga Institute. I've been a student of Iyengar Yoga. I have great teachers. About 20 years ago, I was in Yoga Institute in Santa Cruz, where I learned the basics of yoga, and they taught me so many things about what is called householder yoga and how it is not about doing postures. Then, last year I became a student of Iyengar Yoga, and I had these wonderful teachers who told me the power of alignment, how every body position, so my understanding of yoga is from a practitioner's point of view. But mythology is something that I know very well. And I said, around the world people are talking about yoga. I said it is nice if there is a book which will bring all the Hindu mythologies together, not just Hindu mythologies, but also Buddhist mythology and also Jain mythology. So yoga exists in a way of thinking. It's a way of thinking which exists. So this subject yoga emerged in India, and it emerged in a particular way of thinking. What was this thinking method is what I wanted to explain to people. Now, uh, yes, now yoga is global. Everybody follows yoga, and people have realized the value of yoga. But for most people, it is from the physical posture point of view. What postures do you take? But if you do yoga correctly, you'll realize yoga is not just about the body, it is also about the mind. In fact, the mind plays a very big role. In fact, it is all about the mind when you start going deeper and deeper. Now, the reason for this is the human body in ancient India was considered solidified mind. So, their mind, you cannot see the mind, it is nirguna. But it becomes solid and saguna, it takes a form. And what you see is a form. So, your mind and your body are related to each other because the body is the solidified mind. And if your mind is upset, you will show on your face. If your mind is clear, it will show on your face. So the idea that your body and the mind are connected to each other, this is the meaning of the word nirguna saguna in a simple way. You can make it very complicated, but for me, this is the simple. You cannot see sensations, you cannot see emotions, but you can see the body, right? So let's begin with the body. That is where the attention given to the body is where yoga starts. That is where yoga starts. So the word yoga is found even in the Rig Veda. So it is found 3,500 years ago in the Rig Vedic collection. And here the word yoga means yoke, that with which you hold the horse. So if I draw a horse, so I like to draw things to explain concepts, so I'll draw a lot. So there is a horse. This is a, oops, I hope it can be seen. Yes, you can see it. Can you see it? Oh, I'll need a better pen, better thick pen, so that it becomes easier to see. So Vivek Mahare is being a little vulgar. I think, is he being vulgar? No. The horse. And the horse has to be held. Yoke. That was the word yoga. Now this, remember, whenever you hear a word, it has a literal meaning and a metaphorical meaning. So pakad ke rakhna. तो पकड़ के रखना, किसको पकड़ के, लगाम में पकड़ के रखो. ये लगाम, yuga word came from that. And this lagam is basically, the people said, our sense organs, our indriyas are going in different directions. It needs to be controlled. This metaphor becomes clear in the Upanishads. So the Upanishads are saying, they are saying that the mind has to be controlled. Usko lagam mein leke aao. And then you realize that they are looking at the body in a very beautiful way. So it's a very holistic view of things. So the idea is this. in the beginning, you have just the Atma, which has no form, purely Nirguna. Then around it is the mind. So you have the mind. And then the mind produces the body. And what is connecting the body and the mind? It is the breath. So another circle. So you have the mind, the breath, the body, and the body is connecting with the larger society. Look at the concentric circles that you are seeing. Now this is very important to understand. The word for this is kosha, container. एक डब्बा के अंदर दूसरा डब्बा के अंदर तीसरा डब्बा, this dabbas. So lots of dabbas. So our body which we see is the flesh. This is anna kosha because it is made from what we eat. We eat food and it becomes flesh. Food is flesh. Under that is the breath, pranamaya kosha. Then behind that is the mind. So chittamaya kosha, manamaya, different words. You'll find different books in different words, but I'm giving the simplest definition. So you have the body, you have the breath, you have the mind. And behind that, this is somewhere sitting is the Atma, the Jiva Atma. And the Jiva Atma is connecting with the outside world, Prakriti, which is around us, the world which is around us. So this diagram which I've drawn can be seen in different ways. We are looking at our mind, our breath, our body, society. Now around us, the world that we can experience. Now that world, what is this world that we can experience? One is the natural world, Prakriti. The other is the social world, Sanskriti. Third is our imagination about the world, what we think of the world. Oh, the world is corrupt, the world is good, the world is bad, our opinions. Brahmand. So there is Brahmanda, which is my imaginary world, my opinions, the way I see the world. Beyond that, there is Sanskriti, the culture I live in, and then there is Prakriti, nature, which will always exist. So I'm living in three worlds. Tripura, Brahmand, the world which is created by my mind. Second, social order, law, this world we live in, Samaja. And third is nature, trees, stars, sun, moon. We live in three worlds and they're all here. How do I connect them all? Because I can see everything through my senses. I want to connect the Atma to everything. This is what yoga enables me to do. My Atma, through my mind, through my breath, through my body, will connect with my Brahmand Anda of Brahma, the egg of Brahma. I want to connect with Samaj, Sanskriti. I want to connect with Prakriti. I want to connect with other Jivatmas. I want to connect with you. You want to connect with me. We have to connect. This word connection is a powerful word. And that word is the word from where yoga comes finally. So ghoom firke, the word for yoga in a simple way is connection. Viyoga is separation. Sanyog is coming together. Viyog, Sanyog. Viyog, Sanyog. So when you do, the Iyengar Yoga School will talk about, you'll see when they do the exercise, they will do one position and they'll be strict about focus on the movement of the skin. Look at the way the muscles are functioning. Feel your eye, feel your breath, feel the inhalation, feel the exhalation. Feel the blood moving, the blood, everything you have to connect. And when you do this kind of connection, your mind is getting, something's happening to your mind. You're becoming aware of the world. Your body is waking up. It's waking up. That is why your body is given so much of importance. So when you read the yoga sutras, they will talk about the mind a lot. They will talk about imagination a lot. They will talk about postures a lot. Asana. Asan grahan kijiye. How do you sit? How do you stand? How do you lie down? How do you hold your hands? How look at the dancers, how they move. You have to always look at the yogis and the yoginis. You have to look at the nattis, the dancers. How are, when you look at the statues, how are the gods holding their hands? How everything is in grace. There is a connection in everything, the way the hand is moving, the way the eye is moving. So, dance plays a very important role in yoga. Um, Ritual plays a very important role in yoga. So, you have to, everything comes in yoga, the dance movements, the yogis meditation, the tapasya that people are doing. So there are yogis who are standing on one foot, yogis who are sitting cross-legged. When you go to Harappa, you see this image of a man sitting in Bhadrasan, the throne position. And we wonder whether yoga started in the Indus Valley. We don't know. There is no proof. There is no proof. There is no lack of proof also. But we can imagine, maybe it was there. Maybe the cavemen thought of it, because the cavemen were, why were people in the Stone Age not aware of breath? You know, yesterday somebody sent me a WhatsApp forward, and once in a while WhatsApp forwards are sensible, and it said in the Jewish tradition, when you write in Jewish Hebrew alphabet, the alphabet does not have vowels; they only have consonants. And the word Yahweh, when you pronounce the word Yahweh, it really is like the inhalation and exhalation of the breath. So do this, Yahweh. So when you inhale, the sound is Ya, and when you exhale, it is Wa. So Yahweh, which means I am what I am, the name given by God to himself in front of Moses. So there also somebody is talking about breath connecting us with God. So prana, the life, breath which connects us with the universe. So breath becomes wind, wind becomes breath. Breath becomes wind, wind becomes breath. Food becomes flesh, flesh becomes food. So the connections are being established by ancient people, and they are saying this is where the body is designed. And in the yoga mythology book, I said, okay, let us look at all the stories. I mean, I'm not giving explanation on yoga, honestly, in the yoga mythology. I'm only telling you stories. So, for example, when it was important for me to remind people that it's not just Hindu stories. It is also Buddhist stories. It is also Jain stories. I'll give you an example of this, how the connections are made. Recently in my house, somebody was doing puja. So it was the Dasara puja. So Gadi, the people worship. I worship my computer because computer is my instrument of occupation. My car was worshipped. You can see the symbol over here. This is drawn by many Marathi people. We'll explain this a little later. And people did the swastika sign in my house. Did the swastika. And after they did the swastika sign, they put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like that they did. They did something like this. And my driver is from Andhra Pradesh, so he did 5 drops. My cook is from Maharashtra. He said, हाँ 5 डालते हैं. So I said, why 5? So they said, नहीं वो 5 देवता है. And I was smiling because, what does 5 dots mean? 5 dots can mean so many things. It can mean the 5 elements. It can mean the 5 koshas, the 5 containers. But in Hinduism, the 5 can represent in the Smarta tradition, it represents Vishnu, Shiva, Devi, Ganesha, and Surya, the 5 gods of the Smarta traditions. It also means, as I said, Panch Indriyo. It can mean Panch Kosh. In the Buddhist tradition, it can mean the 5 Tathagatas. In the Islamic tradition, it can mean the Panchapir. There are 5 peers. You find this concept in Rajasthan, you find this concept in Bengal. Panchpir. So this 5 becomes constant. So I wanted to show in the stories how when you read yoga mythology, you realize that it's part of a culture, and yoga emerged in this culture where this understanding of the body took this form. But most importantly, it was linked to rebirth. It was all about rebirth. Rebirth is a very important idea to understand yoga. So when we are talking about, so they will talk about past life, present life, and they talk about various lokas and talas. So this world view which is created under yoga is based on rebirth. And when you start reading yoga more and more, you start reading, there are two schools of thought emerging. You'll see one school of thought is called Tantric, and the other school of thought is called Vedic. Now, what is the difference between Tantric and Vedic? Vedic, another word for Vedic is Mantric. Mantra. So there is mantra and there is tantra and there is yantra. So these words are used a lot, you will see in yoga schools, because when I want to draw yoga, I will only get artwork mostly from tantric schools. So very simple way to understand. Mantra, the word is mana. Mantra. So the sound is used to work on the mind. Man ke liye. Tantra, the body is important. Yantra is something outside the body, an instrument. So this is a yantra. It is outside the body. The statue in the temple is a yantra, a mandala. So yantra and mandala are the same things. So you have these words, various tools are used to help you create connections. For example, those who practice Vipassana. In Vipassana, they say Vipa-asana. There is no asana. There is just sit down and observe your breath, your body. They don't do anything. You just have to observe continuously your breath, your body, your emotions, your thought. So there is a Vipassana. Completely no exercise at all. Hatha yoga will focus only on the body. Raja Yoga will have a more holistic approach. It will say a little bit of pranayama, a little bit of asana, a little bit of yama and niyama, that is the way you conduct yourself in society, your self-discipline, a little bit of pratyahara, focusing on your indriya, a little bit of dhyana, meditation, a little bit of dharana, awareness. So a little bit of everything. So there are different schools of thought. There is Hatha Yoga, there is Tantra, there is Yantra, there is Mantra, there is only Dhyana. Different ways. The point is, at the end of yoga, does it make you a better person? And how do you become a better person? By understanding yourself better and by understanding the world better. So the stories that you hear in the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and all these asanas that you hear, all of them deal with human living. How do we connect? For example, there is something called an Ashtavakra asana. What does Ashtavakra mean? And then you realize Ashtavakra is a rishi who had a bent body. And why did he have a bent body? He had a bent body because he one day corrected his father. And his father got so angry. The father said, "Tu apne aap ko itna chalak samajhta hai ki tere sharir mein, in your body, there will be 8 bends." So he was born with physical defect because his father ke ahankar, his father was so egotistical, father did not like the son being correcting him. So Ashtavakra, when you hear the story of Ashtavakra, you realize even fathers can be irritated or angry and jealous of their own sons. So these are the things that I find very interesting. Or you have Kashyapasana. So when I got all the asanas, when Matt put all the asanas together, he put all the asanas together, I realized that I could classify the asanas in different ways. There were asanas that were related to Brahma. There were asanas that were related to Vishnu. There were asanas which could be related to Shiva. There were asanas that could be related to the goddess. So I had 4 sections of the book. For the goddess stories, Shiva stories, Vishnu stories, Devi stories, Brahma stories. All the rishis I put under Brahma. Plants and animals I put it under Devi. All the stories which dealt with Vairagya or Nivritti Marga, withdrawal from the world, the inner journey, I put it under Shiva. Everything which dealt with engagement with the world, outer journey, that was called Pravritti Marg. So Nivritti Marg, Pravritti Marg. Then there were, the symbols had so many meanings. For example, when a horse is done, I realize horse, yes, some people will say horse is a Hindu symbol, it is associated with Kalki, horse is associated with chariots, with Kinnaras, horse-headed Dadichi, but horse is also associated in Jainism with Sambhavanath. So I said, what about that? Or lion, lion is associated with Durga, but lion is also associated with Mahavir. When you show snake, does the snake represent Adishesha of Vishnu? Does it represent Karkotaka of Shiva? Does it represent Parshnath? Because Parshnath is there in Jainism. Or does it represent the snake Vasuki which was standing behind Buddha? Or does it represent Kundalini Yoga, the metaphorical rise of the chakras? I said, hey, this is very interesting. So different kinds of yogas are emerging, stories are emerging. So through yoga, I learn about Hinduism, I learn about Jainism, I learn about Buddhism, I learn about Vedanta, I learn about mantra, I learn about tantra, I learn about sharira, I learn about Krishna. Because when you talk of yoga, you have to talk about Gita, who very uses the word yoga, and he talks about three types of yoga: Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. Again, you can understand these three looking at this diagram. Jnana Yoga is intellectual. Karma Yoga is social. Bhakti Yoga is emotional. So here is Bhakti. Bhakti is in your heart. Jnana is in your head. And Karma is in your hands. All three are important. Or you have other words. Some people will say, what is the purpose of yoga? Some people will say the purpose of yoga is to attain samadhi. What is samadhi? You can voluntarily slip out of your body and even die. Voluntarily reject your body, not involuntarily. When death comes to you, here you go to death. You can just let your body, you can separate your breath from your body. They think it is possible. Our breath is attached to our body. People say that no, when you do a lot of yoga, you can separate the breath from your body and voluntarily slip out on your own. And that is called one of the meanings of samadhi. So you have Shankaracharya's famous story that he would slip out of his body. He entered a dead body. It was called Kaya Pravesh. He would enter a dead body, experience life as of the person in that dead body and come back. Now this was called Siddha, the possessing of magical powers. So there is Siddha Yoga. You do yoga to get, because you have so much control developed in your body and in your mind, you are able to get supernatural powers. So when you read about Natha Yogis, the Navanatha Charitra, then you will learn about these yogis. So you have the Nath Yogis are Matsendranath, Gorakshanath, Jalendranath, Kanifnath, all these Naths, Bharatri Hari, all these are the Nathas, and the stories of Nathas are full of magic, and they deal with yoginis, and the yoginis are also Chaushashta Yogini. There is always Chausashta Yogini, and again when you say yogini, they are not just a Hindu concept, they are also found in Vajrayana Buddhism. You have Heruka surrounded by the yoginis. When I went to Vietnam, I went to the museum in Cambodia. I saw images of Heruka surrounded by yoginis, and the yoginis were playing musical instruments and Heruka was dancing. And I said, what is this? And I realized this is the same image which I've seen where Shiva is dancing and the yoginis are playing music. And then somebody said, hey, this reminds me of Rasa Leela. The Gopikas are dancing and Krishna is in the center. And then I realized, hey, the Rasa Mandala of Krishna is also something like this, because Krishna is in the center and the Gopikas are dancing around the way our Indriyas, our Nadis are dancing around the Atma. And suddenly you realize the same image is used metaphorically, physically, psychologically. They're trying to communicate concepts using various technologies. They are using concepts, they're using sutras, they're using bhashyas, they're using kathas, they're using akhyanas, vyakhyanas, various ways to communicate the idea of Atma. So when you read yoga, you get to, just by this one word yoga and our desire to connect with people, we learn so many things. Let's look at this. This is my favorite. You'll find this on top of my book. This is in Maharashtra. This image is very popular. Maharashtra and Karnataka. It is called the Yantra of Saraswati. But why I personally like this is because it begins with one and moves towards infinity. So Eka Ananta. So the beej is the seed. The seed sprouts and produces infinite ideas. Infinite ideas produce, like, one seed will produce a tree. In the tree, there will be more seeds. The seed will produce more trees and more trees and more trees. So where is the first seed? Pehla beej kahan hai? This concept, one or many, is how Indian thought is existing. Look at my talk. I began with the beej of yoga. From yoga, I went to mantra, yantra, tantra. Then I talked about karma, jnana, bhakti. I spoke of Vedanta. I'm speaking of tantra. I'm speaking of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. I'm speaking of Buddhism. I'm speaking of Jainism. I'm speaking of Yahweh, the breath of Yahweh, this whole way of breathing, Yahweh. All these ideas, Yahweh. So these words, or somebody told me that breath is actually so hum, so hum. So hamsa means the breath. Yahweh means the breath. So you're finding these connections, and I love these connections because connections is what makes us human. And we can connect with infinity, with Ananta. So the purpose of this book is, I decided to select only 64 asanas because there are 64 yoginis. So 64 asanas. And if you look at the book, I will always have these symbols over here on the top, which tell you how many symbols. So there's 64 like a chessboard, so that you will know how far you have progressed. See, for example, here you have come to the middle of the book. You can see it's in the middle of the book. See this? And then when you go later, it shows progress. This I got from my consultancy background. People need to know how much they have read. And of course, lots of diagrams. I believe in lots of illustrations. So you'll have illustrations about Shiva. I talk about Shiva over here. And then I talk about Bhairava, and I talk about the various forms of Shiva, whether his relationship with Kama, his relationship with Bajrangabali, his relationship with Hanuman, and then the Buddha lying down in a particular way. If you look at it, see the yogis, lying down. So the whole point was to show a holistic view. Like, somebody had told me of the Shanmuga Mudrasana. Shanmuga is the South Indian name for Kartikeya, who has 6 heads. So Shanmuga Ashrama. Or Mayura Asana, which is the peacock. Again, so many different. Then you have, this was a very, very cool idea which I got. Gorakshasana. Gorakshasana, Gorakhnath Kasam. The story of Gorakhnath. The story of Gorakhnath is very interesting. Machindranath was a great sage. Now, who is Machindranath? Machindranath is related with fish. Shiva and Parvati were talking to each other. Now, when Shiva asks the question and Parvati answers, it is called Nigama. When Parvati asks the question and Shiva answers, it is called Agama. So, Agama Nigama. It's a conversation between Shiva and Parvati. And they were talking on Tantra, they were talking on Vedas, and they were talking, and one fish heard it. The fish who heard it became Matsyendranath. A snake heard it. The snake became Patanjali. So a parrot heard it. He became Sukamuni. So the bird heard it, the snake heard it, and the fish heard it. And everybody came to the earth and gave us a different yoga. So Patanjali came and gave Yoga Sutra. Sukamuni came and gave the Bhagavata Purana. Then the fish came and gave us Machindranath. He gave us the Nath Parampara. And the Gorakshan, and then Machindranath, the fish becomes Machindranath. One day when he's traveling on the society, he uses this phrase they use, the Nath Yogis, Alak Niranjan. Alak Niranjan basically means Nirguna Brahmana. The God has no form. Look beyond the body, look beyond the breath, look beyond things, and you'll find the divine. And one day a lady comes and says that I have no children, can you help me get a children? So because he's a Siddha Yogi, he gives some ash to her and says, you take this ash, next year, you will have a baby. Now the lady doesn't believe him. Now again, look at the supernatural story that you have. So a neighbor say, don't believe all these Babajis. So she takes that ash and throws it in a pit which is used for cow dung. Now, 12 years later, Matsyendranath comes back and says, I had given you dhuni, I had given you ash, your child should be 11 years by now, where is it? And the lady, admits that she did not use the dhundi, she still doesn't have any children. So the guru says, fine, where did you put the ash? And he says, I put the ash in a pit where we put cow dung. So he goes to that pit which is covered with cow dung, he removes all the cow dung, and within that he finds a 12-year-old boy. And he says, this boy now belongs to me because you rejected him. This could have been your son, but now it is my son. So he becomes Matsyendranath, has a guru has got a Shishya called Gorakshanath. That is the story of Gorakhnath. So Gorakhpur, the word Gorakhpur you must have heard of. These words come from there, right? So, you heard about these stories, even as I said, Shankaracharya stories. So I love these stories because now, is it really related to Yogasan? Not really. Is it related? But it's somehow connected with yoga. You can't talk about Siddha and you talk about, Ida, Pingala. Ida means the left side, Pingala, the lunar side. The Pingala means the solar side, the solar and the lunar. So Ida, Pingala is the solar and the lunar, and the connecting them is Shushumna. Shushumna. So Ida, Pingala is shown like this, the sun and the moon. Ida, Pingala. So when you see the images of the goddess, if you see the Devi stories, you will see the goddess on her head will have Ida and Pingala, the sun and the moon, to represent infinity. So Ida, Pingala. Or if you look at the goddess ka Choti, she will have 7 flowers, which are the 7 chakras. So, when you do tantric puja, especially in Kerala, the Brahmins are called tantris because they will consecrate Tantra looks at the body 3-dimensionally. So 3-dimensional view of the body. What is 3-dimensional view? There is a vertical view, there is a horizontal view. Now, if you look at the body vertically, they will say, look at the chakras. So you have, if you remember those chakras, this time Muladhara chakra, Swadhisthana chakra, then you have the Manipura chakra, the Anahata chakra, the Vishuddha chakra, the Agna chakra. So all the chakras of the body. So vertically the chakras are located. What about horizontally? The koshas. So you look at the various koshas, the flesh, the breath, the mind. So that is one way of looking at the body. Then how do you look at it left and right? Ida and Pingala. That is the way of looking things at left and right. Another way of looking at it is to look at it from an evolutionary angle. So when you look at the chakras are, they say, the base instincts, the animal instincts goes to the human, to the supernatural instincts, which is why Patanjali is visualized as a serpent with 4 hands. Animal, then human, and then supernatural. So you see the animal instinct transforming into the human instinct, transforming into the divine instinct. Now, what is the meaning of these words? Animals feed themselves. So when you only focus on your own hunger, then you are a pashu, an animal. Humans feed themselves and can feed others, but when they are only feeding themselves, even though they have the ability to feed others, we become greedy, we become ambitious. That's human. And divine is when we realize that instead of feeding ourselves, we have to take care of other people. Therefore, your 4 hands to help other people eat. 2 to feed yourself and 2 to feed others. And that is how Patanjali's image has been formed. Snake, human, 4 hands. Reminds you of the snake around Shiva who listened to the conversation between Shiva and Shakti, and they taught the explanation of Agama Nigama, Veda Tantra, Pravritti Nivritti, Viyoga Sanyoga, disconnection and connections. This is what life is about. In the ancient Hindus believed in rebirth, remember? And they always said that when you die, you realize what you've missed out on life. And therefore, the people who are dead, the Pitras who live in Pitraloka, are suffering and they want to be reborn as humans so that they can live the life in a full way, fully enjoy all these things which yoga teaches us about the Indriyas, about the Chitta, about the Mana, about the Buddhi, about the Sharira, about the Deha, the Dehi, the chakras, the nadis, all the various gunas, the various doshas, all that our body is there. We have to experience and learn this. And yoga is a simple and starting point from where you learn about a new way of looking at the world. Right? But the point is, we must never forget the reason for it. I think the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra definition of yoga is the best definition. Chitta Vritti Nirodha. End of. Now, what does it mean? A very complicated way to explain it, but I explain in this way. You know, the human mind, look at this. If this was the Atma, clean and beautiful piece of paper, when it's covered with all kinds of negative thoughts and fears and insecurities and hunger, it gets crumpled like this. So, chitta mein vritti aa gayi. Abhi yog, what will yog do? It will slowly, through proper asanas and pranayams and jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, all the various yogas, slowly you remove the crumples. So vritti ka nirodh karna, to put an end to the crumpling. So what is yoga? Yoga is the method by which you uncrumple your crumpled mind or unknot your knotted mind. So you unknot the knotted mind. And when you do that, your mind becomes clean, your mind becomes happy, you learn, basically you are at peace. The word Shanti. You are at peace with your body, you're at peace with your breath, you're at peace with your life. When you do a good yoga session, you know how your pores open up. You're able to see things, you become kinder, gentler. There is an empathy with you. If you don't develop empathy, for me, this sahanubhuti, atmiyata, where the jiva atma understands the para atma, not paramatma. I never talk about paramatma, I talk about para atma, the other person. You can empathize and you can connect with different types of beings and understand how everybody is different and how everybody is unique and how diverse everybody is. Then yoga has achieved its purpose. That's the purpose of yoga. And that is what you do. That is what Yoga Sutra is teaching us. That is what Ashtavakra teaches us. That is what the Saptarishis teach us. The Yoginis teach us. That is what Matsyendranath teaches us. We are all like Matsyendranath. We are trapped in Kadalivan. Kadalivan is the mango, is not the banana forest. And Gorakshnath comes and liberates and saves his guru from the Kadalivan. These stories, of course, are there in the folk traditions. They are not easily available. And that is the idea that we learn in the various yogas. So different yogas. I mean, somebody will like Bhakti Yoga, then read Jnaneshwar. Somebody will like Jnana Yoga, you can read intellectual works like Shankaracharya, Madhavacharya. If you like Bhakti Yoga, then you will love poetry of Mirabai. But the body ultimately you have to take care of it. And therefore, I would advise you all to do some pranayam, some asanas, some exercise, hopefully with a good teacher who teaches you to understand and appreciate your body. And you do to the best of your capability. You just wake up. The body wakes up. And that waking up is very, very important. Right? And the thing is the volume of subject, I'm like trying to say how much, and I realize, oh my God, it's already 8:40. And all these conversations happened because Matt Truly came and talked to me about this book. And I'm so happy that I could create this book because it sort of helps people understand so many parts of yoga. You learn a little bit of storytelling, a little bit about different culture, and you learn about the asanas. I'm trying to look at all the questions. I'm seeing Manish. There is so many questions have come, but we don't have so much time. There is Manish is asking a lot of questions. There's Nandini Basu. There is Yeshita. There is Vijay Lakshmi. There is Parvinder. Manish seems to be asking a lot of questions. Manish, I can't answer all the questions. So there is Mr. Naidu again. There is Purushottaman. So lots of questions. But for that, we'll need another session. The point is to give you an understanding, the overview of how yoga is connected to so many aspects of our lives, from Krishna to Patanjali to Nath Yogis to whether it is Yogendraji of Yoga Institute, or it is Iyengar Yoga, or it is the great yoga teachers who came out of Mysore and spread around the world and went to different parts of the world and taught yoga, or if you're part of a yoga academy in New York or New Jersey or Africa, or you are in London, and everybody pays a lot of attention to the physical postures, but I think many more and more people are realizing the value of the breath. And more than the breath and the body, when you start understanding the value of the mind, therefore meditation, mindful meditation, which people keep talking about, but they all together, they all work together. Meditation works, breath works, body works, listening to good stories work. All that, your diet plays a very important role. Everything comes together, right? So today's session was mostly on yoga mythology. There was no book I realized, although there are so many books on yoga asanas and so much on pranayama, stories, nobody talks about stories about yoginis and about Nath yogis and about the Tirthankaras and the Tathagatas. And so I thought I should bring that in one book and hope you like it. You know why the book is colored purple? It's because the highest chakra is considered to be purple in color. The highest chakra, the crown chakra, is considered to be purple in color, and therefore this was purple in color. It could have been any other color, but we just decided that why not give it the purple color because it is the crown chakra. And so people will be curious about the chakras, curious, and don't take these things literally. You can't cut the body and find the chakra. These are concepts. Chakra is a concept, Ida Pingala is a concept, Atma is a concept. These are concepts which help us live a better person. And if yoga does not make you a nicer person, then you're not practicing yoga. That's the simple thing. If it doesn't take away your anger, doesn't take away your jealousy, does not take away your meanness, your competitive spirit, your avarice, your greed, your this frustration, all that will go away because you calm down. You realize what matters in the world and you let go. You let go of all kinds of things. So I'll conclude today's session with my favorite story from the Mahabharata, that when the Pandavas reached heaven and found Kauravas in heaven, so after the entire Mahabharata war is over and 36 years have passed, the Pandavas finally reach heaven. And when they reach heaven, they find the Kauravas in heaven and they get very angry. And the Pandavas says, all the Kauravas are responsible, all the problems on earth. They have created all the problems on earth. Why are the Kauravas in heaven? And Krishna looks at the Pandavas and says, you know what? On earth, the Kauravas did not share their kingdom with you. Now in heaven, you Pandavas are unwilling to share what you have with the Kauravas. So what is the difference between the Kauravas on earth and Pandavas in heaven? If you cannot share, if you cannot be generous, there is no nirodha of the chitta vritti. You're still clinging. So let go and be generous and be kind. That is what Yoga Sutra ultimately teaches us. And to enable us to practice it from our heart, we need the asana, we need the pranayama, we need our gurus to help us. We need people to enable us. We need the stories, we need the Purans, the Itihasas, and we need books like these. So hope you enjoy this and hope you enjoyed this session and learn a lot and enjoy yoga and live in yoga. Namaskar. Thank you and good night. And go and see the Kojagiri moon, the blue moon, which will come only after 30 years again. Bye-bye.